The goal to find a real publisher to publish Vladia's game through the ages was achieved. However, it also did something bigger than that. It brought them together into publishing games themselves. So 1 year later, the newly formed company named Czech Games Edition started working on their first games that were actually published with the CG logo. And with them came a lot of decision-making questions about the process and the kind of games they want to be publishing.
We didn't want to be just, publishing Vladia's games. It was initial moment which brought us to publishing games, but we were looking also for other designers, and Vláďa Suchý had this idea for interesting game, which in the end became League of Six. So first year in 2007, we actually did Galaxy Tracker and League of Six.
It was really fun times because games were created in Vlada's head like this. Like they were popping out like crazy. I remember he was entering the shower and he came back from the shower. He's like, hey, I have an idea for a game. And he described it to me and it was like 70% of Galaxy Tracker right away.
I always created my games based on what I am missing, or what I want to improve in the gaming. And at that moment, we had enough players around that their turn took forever. They were thinking heavily, and I said, okay, let's make a game where it is very fast, where it's still interesting and complex, but no one can delay the game too much. So I decided to create a game in real time, and that was the starting point. And I created some prototype on my computer again. It worked, and I brought it to people.
This is one of the first prototypes of Galaxy Tracker before we started to work on it. The ships are basically the same as were in the original edition of Galaxy Tracker. Yeah, there are still no cube plastic astronauts. There are these little cones made from some modeling clay. These are the ship components. I think that they are recognizable because the concept is the same, it's just the art improved a lot. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it improved to the original edition and then again to the new edition, I believe. People that know Galaxy Tracker could play with this easily.
Batteries are tiny.
Yeah, it's tiny fingers. Brought it to our local game club, and the first game of Galaxy Tracker was played with people, and they wanted to play again, which was great for me because my game usually took several hours, and people were like not, even if they liked them, they were not eager to play another game immediately. With this it worked, and it convinced me that it makes sense, because if people, they can tell you many nice things, but they can be just nice. Mm-hmm. But if they want to play again, that's the best sign.
Through the Ages actually won International Gaming Award, and that prize was handed to Vláďa at Essen 2007, when we were there with Galaxy Tracker and League of Six. And because of that, when we brought or announced Galaxy Tracker from Vláďa, it immediately got some attention.
And CGE were there for the first time with Galaxy Tracker and League of Six. And at that point, I just went up and I was a complete fanboy. And I was like, oh, is Vláďa here? He's all right. I was just like complete fanboy. And it's weird to think back. I mean, that was 15 years ago now, and me and Vláďa, we chat and, we become friends and things like that. But at the time, people quite often say to me, Paul, how do I get into the industry? And I'm like, just be a complete fanboy like I was. And that is the start of my journey into what is now a full-time job in the industry. But that 2006, 2007, and they were like, who's this guy? We don't know who he is, he's just another random fan. But then as I started to get to know, I exchanged a couple of email addresses and I said, look, I love the games that you're doing. You know, if you ever need any help or anything like that. And gradually, over a few years, I got involved in helping with their rule books, doing demos of their games in the UK, helping with their prototypes, and yeah.
One of the first games that I played from CGE was Galaxy Trucker, and I didn't know much about the game going in. I had heard about Galaxy Trucker. I knew it was a game about moving stuff around in the galaxy. And when we played it, he put the tiles out, draw them as fast as you can. We built a spaceship. Didn't have a lot of explanation around that. I built my spaceship, and then I watched over the next 45 minutes as my spaceship was systematically destroyed, and I laughed the entire time. It was really funny to me. It was so entertaining, and it's one of the few times in my life where I played a game, and as soon as it was over, I said, we have to play that again. And how do I get a copy of this? I want a copy of this right now. And the person who taught it to me let me buy their copy from them. And I still think it's one of the greatest gifts I've ever gotten. I was so excited about it. And after that, anything CG put out, I was like, I need to see it. Because Galaxy Trucker just tickled me so much. I never thought I would have so much fun getting blown up.
It was really fun because we even trying to figure out different, rules for it in that time, because there was not enough games, I think, or we didn't own enough games.
When we were doing Through the Ages before, it was like, let's make it, as good as we are able to in the limited time we have and with limited resources we have and so on. But here we wanted to make it really nice. So we approached one guy who is now working for us, Finder, if he would render 3D components for the ships.
I was working full-time for another company, and then in the evenings Vláďa came and told me, okay, so I have this design, so what we could do is come up with some ideas, for example, how the cannons for the Galaxy Tracker would look like, So it should be something that you should be able to shoot the asteroids with, but it shouldn't be like weapon itself, because it's something that actually should be used for sewage company, so what it should look like, so we were thinking, and because the game itself is kind of goofy, so I was thinking, okay, so let's make it this colorful spiral. It's like the laser guns from 50s, this design sort of, so it was really like I like this Spartan style of design, sort of, in the evening, sitting over the computer and designing and thinking.
He did fantastic job, which looked really great, but we found that it's not working as well as the Vláďa's prototype, because it was too detailed. So we had to learn that we need to find some compromise between how beautiful it is and how well it plays. When you just glimpse over your board, you should know immediately how you are and not try to find things hidden in the really nice graphics but unnecessary for the game itself. Many people see only the result and not the process how games are made, actually. Some things we sent to print only something like 5 days before SN, and we had game in SN. That was always our big challenge, and it's still not easy till now, because we always see some things which could be improved.
Alert. Enemy activity detected. Please begin first phase.
And so Space Alert was born.
I remember when I was playing Rainer Knizzia's Lord of the Rings cooperative game, I said, hey, cooperative games are great. It can be really epic, interesting, and I want to do some cooperative game, and I was trying different approaches.
Back then, he actually told me that he would like to solve the problem of the alpha player in cooperative games, when just one player who has more experience or with that game or any board game can actually tell others what to do in cooperative games, and those people will feel like just, I'm just hanging the cards and you are telling me what to do. I don't need to sit here. He had different ideas how to solve it, and based around those ideas, he created or had vision for 3 different games.
And the first idea I had was, I remember exactly the moment when I was at some gaming event or was walking outside in the nature and imagine what happens in Galaxy Tracker when you reveal a card like some enemy or meteor shower or something like this. Then these little guys probably run around their ship and try to fire the cannons and so on. So yeah, that's how the idea was born.
When he was asking me before Christmas, I told him, I like all 3 ideas you are telling me, but I would like to avoid that one which is space themed, because we already released Galaxy Tracker as a space themed game, and it was very well received for first game, CGE game from the new publisher. And I felt like it would be better if people not kind of put us into box. Those are the company which is publishing space-themed games. So I told Vladia to avoid this. I would like to do whichever of those 2 he would like to do. And when we met after Christmas, he said, you see, I finished that space one because it was like the most ready and most finished.
I remember clearly it was late January, I think. We were far in the northern Moravia at some gaming event, and Vlada brought this crazy prototype. Like it was almost impossible to play it, how difficult it was, but it was immense fun. To this day, by the way, I have a hard time playing it because my mind is a little bit messy, and like it's too fast-paced for me. But I saw how people really love it and how enjoy it. And I remember Vlada sitting with Peter sitting with Vlada, and Peter was so thrilled by the game that he was willing to give it a shot.
And he was showing us Space Alert there, and again, it was like game made for me. So I really liked it, and immediately during the first game, Vlada saw that there needs to be some progression, how people will learn the game, that it's not good to put all the rules up front to somebody who never played Space Alert before, because since your time is limited and you do everything under pressure, it falls apart very easily. So immediately he saw that, and the second group, which was playing Space Alert, already had some training scenario and so on. And we were building on that together when we were actually developing the game. Which resulted in, him and Jason, our translator, creating this wondrous How to Become a Space Explorer in 7-lesson walkthrough guidebook, which I think till this day is hilarious and unprecedented in the board game community.
This is where most of CGE's rulebooks have been written. As you can see, sunlight comes in through the solar panels. It gets turned into electricity. I use the electricity to power my laptop. I write the rule book, and then I send it out into space. The rule book bounces off a satellite and then lands in the Czech Republic, which is a long way from here.
I think I would have loved to have more time for this project because there's so much humor in this game, yeah? And localizing humor is not that something you can pull out of your sleeve, yeah? So, and sometimes like getting the humor. And in general, I think this is something with CGE does, it's very interesting. They have some of the rules are simply not short because you have to show and explain many things. And what the strategy here is very often, so we spice it up. So we give some fun on the road, yeah? And like it's not like, oh, I have to read all of this. It's more like, cool, what's the next funny thing coming? It's more like making it more exciting. This is very un-German. It's not, German is like short rule, well-structured, little text, I know where to look it. So it is unusual. So, I mean, of course, it's very generalizing, but it was unusual. And of course it blows your rule, it makes it longer. Yeah? But I think for Space Alert, they did really well. Yeah? And I think if I would have had more time, I'm happy with the job we did, but I think we could have had done even cooler and greater job if we would have more time.
Here, you can see the process of making it, and this is quite close to final. This is how prototype looked like from Vladia, and Google images. And in this game, there was completely new thing we had to make, and that was CD, which we are putting there still. When we started such a new great technology.
Time T+2. Serious threat.
Space Alert was probably the first game that came with a soundtrack. There is a CD, or you can simply download it, and it basically describes various events that happen during play and serves as an important timing mechanism.
Recently, like 2 years ago, me and some colleagues here from the office actually at some gathering were like, we should play through the campaign of Space Alert together, because as far as we remember, it is really great. And it was one of the very few moments where I replayed a game, and instead of it feeling like, oh, it's not as good as I remember, it was like, oh my god, this is so much better than I remember. This game is amazing. Like Space Alert, we replayed the whole thing, and we were like remembering all of these, like, these kind of Vlada things in board games where he has these like fun mechanics that make thematically sense, and these little like things sprinkled all over the game, and we played the game again and we were like, this is amazing and holds up so well. That was a really like a polar opposite of what you usually have, like I'm playing a game again and it's not as good as I remember, I shouldn't have played it again.
And the letters are different. I believe now it is B here and C here. And here is something I call omega 13. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know what it will, during development, I had no idea what it will do. Mm-hmm. If you know a great movie, Galaxy Quest, mm-hmm. It is about some old Star Trek-like TV series. And it's very funny. I love the movie, and they have something on the, and then some aliens built ship based on this old TV show, in the TV show there was this omega 13 stuff. They didn't, and they never revealed in this TV series what it is for. So the aliens built something very strange in the center of the ship, and they didn't know what it does, but it does something very strong. Yeah. So there was this omega 13 here, but I changed it later because I didn't realize what it should do.
I'm amazed how it turned out, considering how late everything was. But no wonder, because that was one of the behemoths to play test and make everything right, because really you need to find your own team and just fly things forever with it. The great thing is, till this day, Space Alert is alive. I don't know if you know about, I think it's French National Agency asked us for permission if they could convert Space Alert into in like a game where they would teach astronauts like real life scenarios, how to react to difficult, unexpected situations when everybody is supposed to work together.
Space Alert also made its way to the set of the Big Bang Theory TV show, and it actually once sat on Sheldon's spot.
Board games and the Big Bang Theory. I loved that the guys played board games all the time, but a lot of people reached out to me asking about why they would get the rules wrong, or why they chose certain games. And the truth is that for the physics stuff, there was usually a physics consultant, an actual physics scientist who would be on set and make sure they got the physics stuff right. But there was no board game consultant. The only experts in board games on set were basically myself and Will Wheaton when he was around. And the producers didn't really listen to us, so I had very little say in the matter. But I did try to, on the set, on the comic book store, I did try to strategically place various board games. You can see a copy of Space Alert behind the counter at Stewart's shop. It's another CGE game by the same design, one of my favorite designers, same guy that designed Through the Ages and Codenames. Vlada Kavatil. I can't pronounce his name, but I love his work.
I have to say that Space Alert was actually also really, really good thing for me, for my personal growth, because there I realized that, when somebody is under stress, like in Space Alert, you can easily see what type of person it is. I would recommend everyone who is trying to hire somebody to actually play Space Alert with that person, because it really shows a lot.
I have so many great memories of just, it works great as a team building activity. It's amazing when you have the same group of people that you keep playing the game and you get really good at it.
The people that we hire to CG are actually all gamers and people that we know usually. And one of them is Elvin with me.
Yeah, it was actually even before I joined CG as an employee. We were on some just board gaming event, some weekend on a cottage, a friend of ours in Slovakia. And we were testing actually the New Frontier, the expansion for Space Alert. And we just kept playing it all over the weekend like non-stop. It was like dozens and dozens of games, and everyone went to bed, and Vitek and I, we just kept playing 2 people. We're just trying to see if it's even possible, because you have these super powerful actions, and we're testing them and tweaking them. And we kept playing till the morning when people woke up again, and we still kept playing. It was amazing.
Now there are 2, if we are not counting the one towards children, there are 2 Spiel des Jahres, one main and one is for kind of experienced people, kind of experts. Back then there was only one, but from time to time they saw that there is some unique game, extremely unique game, which deserves more attention, but it is too complex, too big, or whatever, too expensive for main prize. Back then I remember Agricola got this special prize from Spiel des Jahres, and Space Alert was also one of them. And back then they had always kind of subtitle which kind of justified why it received this special prize. And for Space Alert it was in the end translated into English like New Gaming Worlds. That it is bringing something completely new for board games which was not there before. And that was that time element, and that soundtrack can bring something to board game itself. So we went to ceremony, and that was actually really nice to see that, you know, what we are doing also somebody else has appreciation for. But at that time, we already heard a lot of stories from people who were playing our games and saw the reactions of people in Essen and at other places. So we already saw the result of our work and how people like it, which always kind of motivated us to continue further and try to do more new things.
First phase ends.
He wanted to play Dungeon King. The weekend he designed a board game. That's, you know, what Vlada does.
And at the same time, I was, this was the game I was creating the way that I hope my wife will like this. And she helped me a lot.
And it was at this time that I was still just starting out with my Rahdo Runs Through channel. I'd only done a few videos, and I often found myself with lots of time to kill, so I figured, hey, why don't I film a run-through of Dungeon Petz one afternoon? And I just sat down and did it at a coffee table, and one of my temporary roommates at the time, Jen, who was an animator at the company I was at, she was kind of watching me and afterwards said, "What did you just do?"